Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and today I want to talk about working with close friends. Now, in my field, it's no surprise that you form bonds and connections with people that you vibe with, and these types of people end up becoming close friends of yours. Some of these lasting for many years now. Now, something that I always wanted to talk about was working with a close friend in a professional environment. And why do I want to talk about this? Because throughout my experience in the industry and in a professional setting, I've had experiences where the friendship was strengthened during the time of the production and the professional experience, which also made us do good work. And I can also say that I've also had pretty bad experiences where some of these professional experiences ruined friendships. So my overall opinion is that I think it's totally cool and normal to work with close friends, but I think in order to protect the friendship or in order to be more aware of not falling into certain pitfalls and potentially ruining the friendship and ruining your own dignity, here's some things that I would look out for and to be more aware of based on experiences that I've had and experiences that my close friends have shared with me. I think the first one I can say is that dogmas and paradigms can clash. The way I would define a paradigm is how you view the world and how you choose to live it, or how you choose to do the work, whereas a dogma is kind of like a set of rules that you tend to follow within your life, or in this case, your work. Now, because we all have different experiences and have different backgrounds, we all have very different paradigms and dogmas from each other. Within friendships, there are certain things that you don't see eye to eye with, but you still remain friends because there's some values that you guys share together, and you don't let those differences affect that friendship. And you kind of let it slide, but when you're in a work environment, you kind of have to deal with those things that you don't really see eye to eye head on. So let's talk about animation and storyboarding because that's what I'm familiar with. Like, let's say I'm working with someone that has very strong opinions about storyboarding and animation that I don't necessarily agree with, and sometimes it goes against your own sort of values and dogmas and paradigms or whatever. And it's just one of those things that you have to be aware of and sort of how to navigate through that. Personally, I love learning about how other people work, and I'm always open to hear what they have to say. A friend of yours can end up being your supervisor, and in some cases it might feel like that friend is trying to force a paradigm or dogma that you don't necessarily agree with. Now, depending on your ego, you might not know how to take that. But I think it's just good to be aware that your friends have a way of coping, you have a way of coping based on experience, and maybe their way of doing things, their way of working works in a production that you're both involved with. I don't think you have to sacrifice your own style of working unless you're really trying to break out of that. I would just try to keep an open mind. And if you're willing to work with that, just accept it. But if it's really tearing you apart and you kind of want to protect that friendship, then I can see why you'd want to distance yourself. Next, let's talk about the power dynamic. So there can be cases where your friend becomes your boss or supervisor, or you become a supervisor to your friends. This is normal, and at this point, you just kind of have to accept that this is just the work, and you just have to accept the roles. So let's say I'm working for a friend. I let them know that, look, I'm here to help you, I'm here to share my thoughts, but I'm not here to overstep or anything like that. And the second thing is that if there is anything that I need to address, please tell me ASAP so I don't suffer later in the end. So this part isn't related to work, but it's related to me teaching a class. So I remember teaching a class, and one of my students who was one of my friends would often felt like he needed to lead the class or talk over me. Now, the thing is, I'm open with students sharing knowledge here and there, but I also acknowledge that there are other students taking my class who paid for me. And these students actually reached out to me privately to talk about how they were not okay with someone else taking over my class. Apparently, the same person was also big brothering the other students too. Like, basically trying to get them to share their work to him first before sharing it with me. Basically to give unsolicited or forced feedback. Unless it was consensual to me and to the other students, that is not okay. And the structure has to be respected. So I was working with someone that was pretty hesitant on giving me notes and would redo my work without letting me know because they didn't want to feel like they were overstepping on that friendship or kind of offending me in some way. But this person ended up being way more on top of notes with the other artists on the same team. From what I've experienced and observed, that doesn't really help anyone down the line because later on it caused problems that affected the friendship but also affected the work dynamic too. I think that now knowing that this can happen, it's just something that I have to be aware of in the future, and maybe this is something that you might want to be aware of in case you're working with friends as well. So I think if I were to give some sort of, let's say, advice from this, I would say, just make sure, let them know that you're there to do your job. and to basically have an open invitation where you're willing to have conversations about feedback, about dealing with issues with the work. And this has to be done early on, so they don't feel like they have to withhold due to the nature of the friendship. But another thing that can happen is that a friend can change the way they treat you because they are in a position of power. And in some cases, that could be pretty dismissive or rude. That's just another thing that you might also have to be careful about too, because sometimes it could just be misunderstanding. And sometimes it could just be an ego issue. And as someone who has had ego issues in the past, sometimes it's so easy to forget that line between someone just simply giving you notes and their 2 cents versus someone talking you down. And I think within a professional environment, especially when it comes with friends, that's just something that you might have to be careful and more aware about. The next one I want to talk about is taking advantage of the casualness of the friendship. There's way more leniency. So I'm going to give you a few examples. Let's say I hire a friend because I need their talent and I need them to do work for me, for a client. As days go by and we're hitting closer to the deadline, I hear nothing from this friend, or this friend hasn't even started on the assignment. And at the very last minute, they flake out, or they're just super casual about it. I had someone abandon the work that I gave them because they found an opportunity that was better for them in the end. And this was all done last minute. Or maybe it's a friend not respecting your availability. Like sometimes I would get important meetings at like 11 p.m. because they wanted to go over stuff, whereas I was waiting to hear back from them within the day. At the end of the day, no pun intended, I think it's about how much leniency are you willing to give to a friend over work. Like, how strict are you about your time and energy and your availability, or how casual are you about it? Everyone's different. But I think it's good to let it be known on how you want to approach working with this friend, because regardless, I think it needs to be respected. Another thing that you might want to be aware of, and this is something that I just thought of last minute, is that sometimes you might exaggerate your feelings towards a friend. So if you have good thoughts and feelings for a friend, it's going to be exaggerated to the max. Like, this is my best homie, he's the best dude ever, etc., yada yada. And when something bad happens between that friendship, you exaggerate that this person is the worst person ever, that they betrayed you, that they're a traitor. Whereas if it was another person that you don't really have any strong attachment to, then it's almost like a nothing burger or not a big deal. So that's another thing that can happen. I mean, if you don't believe that, think about dating and relationships. If you like this person and you're having a good time, you exaggerate how amazing this person is. If they had a really bad breakup, they're gonna see that person as like a person who ripped their heart and stomped it to the ground and spit on it. And look, it happens because you're just wrapped up in personal passion and emotion. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that you have a bias towards a certain relationship. So I would just say be careful and be aware if you might be doing that yourself. The last one I want to talk about, and this is my final point, maybe the work environment shed light on something where you realize that the friendship is no longer compatible. It could be that experience was kind of toxic and it affected that friendship to the point where it's just painful. There's a lot of other reasons. It could just be reasons where the communication skills are off, the misunderstanding happens over and over again, the chemistry doesn't really work, the compatibility doesn't work. Whatever it is, maybe there's something that happened in that work environment where the friendship is no longer worth holding on to afterwards, outside of that work environment. I think one of the toughest things that I had to go through was realizing that you would try to sort of reconnect, but they would not make the effort to even do that with you. And then through the grapevines, you end up hearing how they felt about you from other people. At that point, you just have to move on, and moving forward, you kind of have to start looking at things that you value about what you look for in future friendships, or things that you want to maintain with your current friendships. And if you're working with friends, stuff to look out for. So the message that I want to wrap up with is that I'm not trying to say you should avoid working with friends, because it could end up being a really good experience where the friendship is strengthened, but then it can also be a pretty bad experience where the friendship is affected. The points that I was trying to make in this video is things that I've observed and noticed that can affect the friendship and work dynamic. A tough lesson that we all face is that over time, some people are just gonna grow apart because we change, or the things that we value together, we no longer value. Even if you try to maintain that friendship, sometimes it just happens. I think in both a friendship and a work environment, you kind of have to leave space for people to, just let out their feelings without any judgment. Like, have people express their frustrations or their issues. And it shouldn't be the listener's job to try and come up with a solution immediately or to kind of dismiss what they're saying. Because in general, we all need to be heard. And then on another day, you can work together in coming up with a solution. With that being said, I think it's a good idea to kind of establish certain rules with a friend. So things like respecting that time, how notes and communication are dealt with, establishing roles and responsibilities, and making sure friendship and work doesn't blur the line. Now, I personally had to rewrite and re-record this video because when I was writing it, I came from a place of passion. I had experiences where I was hurt. There's a part of me that's still trying to wrap my heart around that. And as I was writing and recording myself for this video, there were times where I caught myself, blaming friends, and, blaming the circumstance. But then the more I think about it, there's just a lot of factors that we don't necessarily think about. And it's so easy to point fingers at one another. Like, I know my past friends were going through shit, I was going through shit, and I definitely think that affected the professional experience. I mean, when I was writing this video, I was also thinking about how much I discovered about myself, like how I work in an environment, and values that I keep in mind that I look for within people, within friendships, for the future. So what you're hearing in this video is me talking about stuff that I've revisited over and over again, just so my head is a bit clearer. I actually cut out more than half of what I originally wrote and recorded, because there were times where I realized it was starting to sound a bit petty. Anyways, that's all I want to talk about. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.